morning, everyone, and welcome back to Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today is Monday. In just a couple hours, I will be driving down to Mobile to enjoy myself some Senior Bowl activities. It's the best time of the year. The pre-draft process is finally kicking off. I know we had the Shrine Bowl, but the Senior Bowl, that's when it really begins. Very exciting week coming up with tons of great content coming out from me and the rest of the Player Profiler team and Roster Watch that will be down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. So today, I thought I would like to kick things off with a little bit of a preview. I've got 23 rookies that I wanted to highlight on this morning's episode. And we're going to talk about it. It's going to be good. So this is top 20 or so rookies that you need to be watching out for at the Senior Bowl this week. So go ahead and take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. We're here. Good morning to everyone here in the chat, Bach and Jamie and everyone else piling in. If you're listening on the Wake and Take podcast version, again, you can find that via the link in the description. Check out the description. You can find the podcast if you don't feel like looking at me and you just want to listen to me. Although, come on. Anyway, guys, it's exciting stuff. Before we get into the Senior Bowl, I just want to briefly talk about yesterday's AFC and NFC championships. Great games for the most part. Obviously, the Eagles did crush the Commanders, but it was still good to see Jaden Daniels at least do his best. And Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, they're just studs. Even A.J. Brown showed up. Devontae Smith kind of in a way. Dallas Goedert. I mean, the Eagles, like I said at the beginning of this thing, really are the most complete team in the NFL. Excited to see them in the Super Bowl again. And then in terms of the AFC Championship, really my heart just goes out to Josh Allen and the Bills. To continuously just come up against the juggernaut Chiefs and just lose in a close way every single year, it feels like it just has to be so painful. And to Dalton Kincaid, I do want to say, you got to catch that. I know that it's not obviously a routine catch or anything like that, but the difference between a good player and a great player are the people that make those catches. And so again, I just have another reason to just not quite feel like Dalton Kincaid is going to be the truly elite tight end that we hope he'll be. I'm sure he'll still be awesome. I'm sure he'll still be good, but man, you got to make those catches if you want to find yourself into the truly elite status of the tight ends. I mean, that's, that clutch factor means so much at that position in particular. So really painful to watch. I do think the Eagles will beat the Chiefs, though. I do. I know that I keep just saying I just don't think the Chiefs can do it, and they just keep doing it. But the bad man can't keep getting away with it, and I do, like I said at the beginning of this whole thing, really do believe this Eagles team is just primed to win this Super Bowl. So, going to be exciting stuff. I'll actually be in New Orleans, not just going down for Player Profiler to cover the Senior Bowl, but the following week I'll be out in New Orleans covering the Super Bowl. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Very excited. Thank you to Matt for sending me there and the rest of the Player Profiler team. It'll be me, Anand, Brittany Foxworth, the great Brittany, and Brendan Booth over from the News Desk team down in New Orleans. So make sure you stay tuned for that content. But that is not what you're here for. Yeah, the AFC Championship. Yeah, the NFC Championship. That was fun. That was great. We're heading into the Super Bowl. But the real fantasy football gamers, the Dynasty gamers of the world, we're ready for the Senior Bowl. This is what we've been waiting for. This is where you truly learn a lot about the incoming rookie class. Like, yeah, we all pretty much know who we're going to be using our first round picks on, but these are the players that you'll use your seconds, your thirds, maybe even your fourths for the Ryan Flournoys of the world. And it's really, really exciting stuff. You learn so much this week. And the beauty of it is you learn everything in the practice. Like, the game doesn't even matter. It's such a unique atmosphere and place. Everyone's down there from, I mean, you literally everyone. Everyone is literally Daniel Jeremiah to Ian Rappaport, right? To, Mike Tomlin. I mean, like the whole NFL is there. It's incredible stuff, and I'm very excited. I'll be, like I said, I'm driving down there in a couple hours. I'll be meeting up with Theo, Anand, Brendan Booth, and the Roster Watch gang, Cody Carpentier and Alex Dunlap, as we bring you coverage tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday from the greatest pre-draft process event. Really great stuff. So I went through every single player as I do my research. offensive side of the ball. I only care about fantasy, really. The defenders, I'm sure, are great, but I'll find that out in the NFL. I'm doing some fantasy scouting when I'm down there. So I have stats and pretty small scouting report stuff from NFL Draft Buzz around every player, just so I could have some priors heading into this. And then I went through for this episode and grabbed 20 or so of these rookies that I think have something that jumps out to me when I'm looking at the scouting report, when I'm looking at the box scores from their career, and I'm excited to talk about it. We've got players at every position that I think are going to make some impact this week, and it's going to be really, really good stuff. So we'll start at the quarterback position, and there's no particular order here. You know, you'll kind of hear in my excitement how I feel about these players as we go through. But these are the ones that I think are at least, you know, the cream of the crop heading into the week. Will they finish the week as the cream of the crop? I don't know. That's the beauty of the Senior Bowl. But of course, that's what we're here for. So starting off at the quarterback position, we're going to go with Jalen Milroe. He's, of course, Alabama's quarterback. He's 6'2", he's 225 pounds, and he has been a very hit-or-miss prospect. In fact, not a lot of people are excited about him. He's kind of got like the Jalen Hurts feel where he might just be like a third-round pick or even later at this point. He really hasn't done enough. I mean, Alabama has kind of fallen off since he's been the quarterback, and not a lot of people are excited about him. But what I do like about Jalen Milroe is, of course, the fact that he's like Jalen Hurts, he can run the ball a decent bit. He had 726 rush yards this year and 20 rushing touchdowns, which is kind of the big deal here. But in terms of his passing, it's just not there. Back-to-back seasons with less than 3,000 passing yards. It's just not too much to get excited for. But something like the Senior Bowl is a great place for him to kind of hone in some of this passing stuff, and especially more the kind of dink and dunk tools and stuff. Because I will go ahead and say, the Senior Bowl is not a great place to scout quarterbacks. It really isn't. They're not really asked to do a lot, and they don't, like, the big ones don't even play in the game. And so last year, if you'll remember, like, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, they were down there, and no one was impressed. In fact, I went on this damn show and talked about I was most impressed with Carter Bradley, and that was more so just because he looked just as good as everyone else, but that's practice. Okay? And so it is very hard to come away with a big kind of quarterback analysis from the Senior Bowl, but for a player like Jalen Milroe, this could be a good opportunity for him, especially just to show some sort of pocket presence. Like, for example, last year when I was scouting Spencer Rattler, Joe Milton, both of them, and Joe Milton, he at least kind of figured it out, but Spencer Rattler didn't. And like I said, after the Senior Bowl, I was totally turned off on Spencer Rattler. I didn't want anything to do with him, and the rest of the NFL agreed with how far he fell in the draft because he never really wanted to pass the ball. He very, very frequently wanted to just scramble, get away from his reads. And so for a quarterback like Jalen Milroe, yes, we know you can run. So can you go down here into the Reese's Senior Bowl, and can you be a decent pocket passer and work through these passing drills along with the other pocket passing quarterback peers? Because the other quarterbacks here, for the most part, are pure pocket passers, except for Jackson Dart, who we'll talk about in a second. He also has some wheels. But Jalen Milroe has a lot to prove this week. We know he can run. We know he's elusive. But how good of a passer can he be? And that's something that he hasn't really displayed too much at the NFL level. And if he goes out there and he just scrambles repeatedly, then that tells us exactly what we need to know. So definitely keep an eye on Jalen Milroe, especially his pocket presence this week. But he has a huge opportunity this week to boost his draft stock. Another quarterback that's going to be down there, especially to boost his draft stock and has been trending up, is Will Howard. Will Howard, of course, won the national championship, is heading in, or just finished his 5th year, was at Kansas State, but transferred to Ohio State this year and won the national championship. He's 6'4", 235 pounds. He can run a little bit. He's more of a scrambler, only 226 yards, but did have 7 rushing touchdowns, 9 rushing touchdowns the year before that. So he can obviously get out of the pocket, get some extra yards when needed, but it's not like a Milroe, right, where he's going to actually have some designed runs. Will Howard, though, because of his national championship winning, has severely increased his draft stock. This was a quarterback that not a lot of people were excited for, especially heading into the year, but even after the year, really, especially since Ohio State lost to Michigan to end the year, they just, he lost all steam. But then he showed up in a big way in the college football playoffs. He beat Tennessee, he beat Oregon, he beat Texas, and he beat Notre Dame. And it's not like his stats were that impressive in any of them except for the Oregon game. In the Oregon game, he had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and over 300 passing yards. But the others, 2 touchdowns against Notre Dame, no interceptions. Against Texas, just 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And against Tennessee, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. So he did show up on the big stage, but not in an incredible way, just in a very good enough way. And he did lead that stacked Ohio State team to the national championship. So what's important here for Will Howard down in Mobile is, hey, you don't have all of these amazing Ohio State wide receivers. How quickly can you establish a connection with all these guys you've never thrown to? And how well can you read these defenses, find the open receiver, yada, yada, yada? It is a very big week for him. I would say that this is, for Will Howard, the biggest week of his pre-draft process because it really does have a lot to show, or he has a lot to prove here this week. Yes, he won a national championship, but all of the scouts are still saying, hey, you are on a stacked Ohio State team. What can you do with new players, and what can you do under an NFL coach, right? They have NFL coaches do this thing, and yeah, so I think it's a huge week for Will Howard. He looked good in the big games, obviously won the national championship, finished the year with 4,000 passing yards, had over 40 total touchdowns, obviously decent stats, but was there for 5 years, or in college for 5 years, and only had the 1 year in Ohio State. So he has a lot to prove. Even with his draft stock rising, he has a lot to prove this week. Another quarterback that we need to be keeping our eye on is Jackson Dart. He's a senior out of Ole Miss, and he has, a little bit more balanced of an approach. He's 6'2", 225 pounds, had over 4,000 passing yards, but also had nearly 500 rushing yards this season. He has good arm strength, and he can run a decent bit. But at USC and Ole Miss, he never really had truly elite weapons. So this is a player where he's going to have a bunch of different wide receivers, and it'll be very interesting just to see how he does down in Mobile with all the new wide receivers through the drills. How often does he scramble? How good does he look scrambling? How good of a pocket passer can he be as well? It's a really interesting week for Jackson Dart. So this is one of the quarterbacks that I'm most excited to watch, really. He has a lot of different intangibles as well as skills, right? He's a very, very talented quarterback and really can do it all. So I'm very excited to see him in particular. I think he's probably the quarterback I'm most excited for down in Mobile. That's Jackson Dart, who can kind of do it all. And then lastly, the quarterback that I guess we'll be watching is, of course, Dillon Gabriel. I mean, he's been in the league or college for 6 years now, but did just lead Oregon to a #1 overall season and was decent enough. He has 5 out of 6 of his seasons with over 3,000 passing yards, and this year had 30 passing touchdowns and 7 rushing touchdowns, on the way, of course, to leading Oregon to that #1 seed. Now, in the playoffs, he was pretty good as well. In the Big Ten Championship, he had 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. And in the loss to Ohio State, had 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. So he's a poised quarterback, right? This is a guy who doesn't turn it over a ton, 30 touchdowns to 6 interceptions over the season, and has really high football IQ. That's, of course, going to come from being in college for 6 years. So he has a lot to prove at the Senior Bowl. Like we saw last year, a lot of the players who were in college longer came into the NFL a bit more pro-ready. So how can he command this offense at the Senior Bowl with all these new players? He doesn't have anything truly elite, though, right? Like, he's just pretty good at everything and very poised. So this is a good opportunity for him. Like I said, the Senior Bowl, you can't really prove a lot, but you can prove your poise. You can prove just your ability to kind of operate an offense from the quarterback position. So I think Dillon Gabriel could actually see his draft stock rise a considerable amount this week, especially just kind of meeting with coaches and just doing all the interview processes and stuff like that. It'll be nice. Although he does show a lot of hesitation over some of the over-the-middle throws, and that is a lot of what the Senior Bowl shows, is just these quick routes. Like, they don't, like last year at least, they didn't really take any deep shots, and that was one of the big qualms from the receivers, was that the quarterbacks were being very safe. If that's going to happen again this year, then that'll probably help Dillon Gabriel. So those are kind of the quarterbacks I'm keeping an eye on this week in particular. Dillon Gabriel, Jackson Dart, Will Howard, and Jalen Milroe. Those are kind of the big ones. And before we move on to the running back, I do want to play a little bit of an ad break from Fast Draft.
Oh, I see all this mock draft information out there. Oh, this mock, that mock. Hey, what about a real actual fantasy game? The Flex 4 game on Fast Draft, draftfaster.com, is open. You draft 6 running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. The top 4 enter your lineup every week. It's that easy. It's that simple. Drafts take 5 minutes. There's a $50,000 prize pool. It's $15,000 to first. It's just a $5 entry. And the best part, no rake. No rake whatsoever on Fast Draft, the first 2025 best ball contest to open in the world, is ready for you to draft up to 150 teams. Draftfaster.com, draftfaster.com. Start playing best ball for real.
Yeah, and as we're talking about kind of getting ahead of the 2025 season here at the Senior Bowl, you might, probably not from the Senior Bowl, but, you might have a rookie that you can get a really good arbitrage opportunity right now in that Flex 4 tournament that Podfather was talking about. It's early best ball, right? It'll be going up until kickoff if I'm correct in that. So you can really get a good ADP arbitrage right now, it's still very 2024, but you got to think about next year. So it's a great opportunity if you feel confident about some 2025 takes to go ahead and play at Fast Draft. You can use promo code JASON for a first deposit match up to $25. Running backs. There's a very interesting one. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? You probably do. Because Cam Scatabo, I hope I say that correctly. I think it's Scatabo, might be Scatibo, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'll find out. But either way, Cam Scatabo, coming from Arizona State, looks like a Christian McCaffrey light, if we're being honest here. He's 5'11", 215 pounds, and really can do it all. Literally can do it all. He had 1,700 rushing yards and 21 rushing touchdowns, but 45 receptions for 605 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns last year. An incredibly productive running back in all facets. And you might be asking, well, hey, is that Arizona State? Did he ever really play against any true competition? Well, yes. Against Iowa State, he had 170 rush yards and 2 rushing touchdowns on top of a receiving touchdown. And then against Texas in the college football playoffs, he had 143 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 99 receiving yards. Truly an incredible running back. I'm very excited to watch Cam Scatabo this week. As I saw last year at the Senior Bowl, running backs have the most to prove and most to show as well. Running backs can really increase their draft stock this week, and it really, all the drills kind of benefit the running backs the most. Because they're just taking carries, catching out of the backfield, and all that stuff. Like, they can show their hands, they can show their vision. So running backs are the best to watch, in my opinion, at the Senior Bowl. And one like Cam Scatabo, I really think, if you remember the hype for Dylan Laub last year, this is like 10 times that. Because against truly good opponents and had very similar stats, if not better, right? At least in terms of when you kind of equate the competition level and everything. But 45 receptions, 605 receiving yards, that's immaculate. 1,700 rushing yards and 21 rushing touchdowns, that's immaculate. Showing up in the big games, that's immaculate. So Cam Scatabo, honestly, the player I'm most excited for overall this week, can truly do it all and had incredible stats, an incredible athletic skill set, and is really, the Senior Bowl in particular is the type of event that really benefits the type of player that Cam Scatabo is. So start trading for your seconds right now. Start getting your seconds right now for Scatabo. I think he's going to be incredible, and I think his draft stock is going to improve a ton. Another interesting running back is going to be RJ Harvey. He has back-to-back years with over 1,400 rushing yards, and this year had 22 rushing touchdowns on top of 20 receptions for 267 receiving yards. So he's a decently good running back, but he is a little undersized. He's 5'9", 208 pounds. So he's short, but does have the weight that helps him out a little bit. And of course, like I said, back-to-back years of over 1,400 rushing yards. That's pretty decent, right? He can handle the load, and he's an efficient running back. But obviously nothing like Cam Scatabo where he can truly do it all, but I do like to use 20 receptions as kind of a benchmark for being able to catch the ball. He may not have just been asked enough to do it, but he can do it, which is nice. So this is a workhorse running back who's also very, very quick. Very, very quick. So RJ Harvey is someone that I'm going to be keeping an eye on for sure. He might probably rise up to the seconds as well, as I see Jamie saying that they've been taking him in the thirds. I think he'll probably rise a bit as well. Another interesting running back is going to be Devin Neal. He has 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons and 2 straight years with over 1,600 rushing yards. And as I use the 20 reception benchmark for running backs, he has 3 straight years with over 20 receptions. He's a very good pass catcher, and he can kind of do it all as well. And if you look at his kind of scouting report, he's extremely dangerous in the open field and has outstanding vision. So this is a very interesting player, and he has the size as well at 5'11", 215 pounds. So Devin Neal is a player that we need to be keeping our eye on as well. His big weaknesses, if anything, is just the fact that he's not great in pass protection, but we don't really care about that. We just don't really care about that. You know, that's something you can learn at the NFL level. You're not asked to do it enough in college. So I think that 5'11", 215 pounds, he'll be able to do it. But even then, he's good out of the backfield as a receiver, so hopefully they don't have him blocking too much anyway. But Devin Neal, again, 3 straight years with over 20 receptions out of the backfield, 3 straight years with over 1,000 rush yards. That type of consistency doesn't come around a lot, so I like Devin Neal. I'm very excited to watch him. And then the Michigan running backs. As a Michigan fan, I'm not going to lie, this will be a interesting week for them. Because last year, Donovan Edwards, right? Donovan Edwards was kind of held back by Blake Corum, but then looked amazing in the national championship, had 2 rushing touchdowns to open the game, right? Like, looked incredible in that game, and even ended up on the NCAA cover because hype for Donovan Edwards was massive. But then enter Kalel Mullings, who came in and actually finished this year with more carries, more rushing yards, and looked better on the bigger stages. So Donovan Edwards kind of lost his job to Kalel Mullings over the course of the season. And that to me is concerning for Donovan Edwards. However, you know, Michigan is a classic team. They use the 2 running backs. So I want to see how they look this week. I do. They're both more... Well, Donovan Edwards can catch the ball a little bit better, but not quite as well. Like, that's not a true skill set of his. He can do it, but he's more of just an explosive running back. And Kalel Mullings is more of a power running back at 233 pounds. So it'll be nice to see. Donovan Edwards also has really, really good size. So it'll be just cool to see how they look. You know, they're not going to be on the same team anymore. It's not going to be as balanced of an approach. So this is a huge week for both of these running backs, in particular, Kalel Mullings and Donovan Edwards. Kalel Mullings is the one that is more exciting right now. He's higher on a lot of draft boards and looks to be the better running back. Again, he had more touches, more yards, more everything except for receptions than Donovan Edwards this year. And of course, weighs like 20 more pounds than him. So Kalel Mullings is the more exciting one, but both of these running backs have an opportunity to prove themselves this week, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye on them. The next running back that's incredibly exciting is Ollie Gordon II. And like Donovan Edwards last year, he was expected to be a high draft pick. But he had some injuries this year. The Oklahoma State offense wasn't quite as good either, and he took a step back. But in 2023, he actually won the Doak Walker Award, which is the best running back in college football, had over 2,000 yards and 22 touchdowns, and really looked like an incredible running back. He's got great size as well at 6'2", 225 pounds, and has only fumbled twice in 2023, which, again, just such an incredible season from him. Took a downtick this year, but, you know, we don't really care about that. He showed the talent already, just had a little bit of a down year. Yes, that's disappointing, but he still had over 1,000 yards total. He still had double-digit touchdowns, and again, battled some injuries over the course of the year. I think this is a huge week for him to increase his draft stock and really separate himself from the rest of the class. If he can go out there and look like 2023 Ollie Gordon, it could be pretty special and really, really impact his draft stock. Yes, this is a loaded running back class. It really, really is. And this is a one who, if he was able to enter the draft last year, might have been like a 2nd-round pick and up there with like the Marshawn Lloyds and the Blake Corums of the world. But unfortunately, just wasn't able to enter the draft yet. But now he is. It's exciting stuff. Yes, he had a down year, but I still think he's a talented running back, and I think that he can prove himself immensely this week. It's going to be him and Cam Scatabo, to me, that are going to kind of be the elite options. But if Ollie Gordon can separate himself from even Scatabo, that'll really, really show just how good he is and really, really impact his draft stock. So again, I say, really try to scoop up these seconds and thirds right now. As I look through the Senior Bowl, a lot of these running backs in particular look very, very exciting. I have a couple more running backs to talk about. Woody Marks out of USC, 5'10", 208 pounds. And what drew me to him, only 1,000 rushing yards, which of course is awesome. Transferred from Mississippi State, so he was in the SEC. Never really did a lot there, but this year at USC, again, 1,100 rushing yards. But what really drew my attention was his receiving prowess. Here are his receiving totals from a freshman to a fifth-year senior. 60 receptions, 83 receptions, 48 receptions, 23 receptions, and then right back up to 47 receptions. So this is a receiving back. And that's just exciting stuff. We love receiving backs. It'll be very interesting to see what he does, right? Like, can he show his vision and everything? Or is he just going to be a pass catcher at the Senior Bowl? What's cool about him is he also has a lot of special teams production and has shown that he can be a workhorse. I mean, he had over 200 touches last year. So I think it could be good for him. It really can. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on Woody Marks, especially as a receiver. Another one is Brashard Smith out of SMU. Not a lot of people talking about him, but spent the last 3 years at Miami where he wasn't able to make an impact. So he transferred to SMU. He had 1,300 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns, but 39 receptions for 327 yards and 4 touchdowns. So again, 20 receptions is kind of my benchmark for being able to catch the ball. So if we're talking about 39, 40, 60 for some of these running backs, then that's what we're really looking for. And for Brashard Smith, you look at the scouting report, and it says explosive acceleration, elite top-end speed, and really, really good at finding the correct angles, on top of having excellent vision in space and being a legitimate receiving threat. This player looks exciting. I'm very excited to see how he looks this week. That is Brashard Smith out of SMU. And lastly, another receiving back is LaQuint Allen out of Syracuse. Back-to-back seasons with 1,000 rushing yards, had 16 rushing touchdowns this year, but had 64 receptions for 521 yards. That's just awesome stuff. Again, we love seeing 20 receptions. So to talk about 64 receptions is amazing. So LaQuint Allen, not a lot out there about him. I couldn't even find anything on NFL Draft Buzz, but when I see 64 receptions, that makes my eyebrows raise. So it'll be really cool to see him stack up at the Senior Bowl this week. He's 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, so he reaches both those thresholds and could really establish himself this week. So again, you got to get those thirds. But also those seconds. There's just a lot of running backs. These are only the ones I'm excited about. But I remember last year, every running back looked good and made an impact in some way. So these are the exciting ones, but there's even more out there that I'm not even hinting on. So again, you got to start trading for those seconds and thirds in particular. LaQuint Allen out of Syracuse, one of the bigger receiving threats at the running back position down in Mobile. Wide receiver, I'm not going to lie, the wide receivers at the Senior Bowl don't excite me that much. I'm going to be completely honest with you. However, here's a few that I'm at least going to be keeping my eye on for one reason or another. Pat Bryant out of Illinois. He's tall. You know, he's 6'3", 200 pounds, and I'm just going to go ahead and, like I started with each position so far with a little bit of an anecdote from last year. Last year, Johnny Wilson was there. He's 6'5", right? So, you know, a little bit different than 6'3", but not quite. And what I saw from Johnny Wilson and what I was excited for was his height, right? Like, we don't have a lot of tall receivers anymore in the NFL. It has kind of gone away from that. But they are still good red zone threats. So that's, of course, what we're going to be watching for. And so what I saw from Johnny Wilson last year was he's not an NFL receiver. You know, he's too tall, he's too lanky, not smooth, and not good enough hands to be a red zone threat. So I want to keep my eye on the tall receivers this year because I do think that that's something that will come back to the NFL at some point. And there are a lot of tall receivers at the Senior Bowl this year. And when it comes to Pat Bryant, he had 10 receiving touchdowns, so he has the red zone capability. He had nearly 1,000 yards, 984, right? So, and he's Big Ten, so it's not like they pass the ball a ton. And what I love about him is just what they say about him in the scouting report. Masterful at manipulating leverage against defensive backs. Natural hands catcher with a massive catch radius. Creates yards after the catch. Refined understanding of spacing and timing in the red zone in particular. So Pat Bryant is one that I'm very excited for because he also has like the 200 pounds on top of being 6'3", so he has the size. So he is a tall receiver, red zone threat that I'm going to be keeping my eye on in particular, especially during the red zone drills. Another tall receiver that I'm keeping my eye on is Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. He's 6'4", 215 pounds, had 1,100 receiving yards and 9 receiving touchdowns this year. which is just awesome, especially at Iowa State. Really good hands, impressive spatial awareness, savvy route running skills, and can find themselves as a quarterback's best friend in tight windows and contested situations. So this is another tall receiver that I'm be keeping my eye on, Jaden Higgins. And his teammate, Jalen Knoll, not tall. Not tall at all, but very quick. He's 5'11", 200 pounds, also had 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns this year, and is a route-savvy player. He uses head fakes. He uses body lean. He has my ball mentality on contested catches. And really, really good after the catch. Really good at kick and punt returns as well, which I just love. Players that can find themselves impacting the team in any way. This is a player that could turn into like a Lad McConkey type hype. Jalen Knoll. He can do it all. And so I like him a lot. 5'11", 200 pounds. Very quick. Good route runner with good hands as well. With special teams ability. Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins, both Iowa State wide receivers, are very interesting for me. And there's another taller receiver, Ty Felton, and this is the one that I'm less excited about. He's 6'2", but only 181 pounds, so I'm having, kind of the Johnny Wilson feel. But he did have 1,100 yards and 9 receiving touchdowns, so he's a little bit better of a route runner than Johnny Wilson was, and really good after the catch as well, with good body control and spatial awareness. So I'm not as excited about Ty Felton, Big Ten tall receiver, as I am Pat Bryant, but I am definitely keeping my eye on him out of Maryland. I don't think he's like elite in anything. I just think he's very good at a lot of stuff. But what is good is he did show up against some of the top tier opponents, which to me is, I love that clutch factor. I talk about it all the time. So Ty Felton at least I'm keeping an eye on him, but that 181 pounds is concerning to me at his height. Now, the top receiver to most people heading into the Senior Bowl is Xavier Restrepo out of Miami. He's 5'10", 198 pounds, and is looking like he's going to be a slot receiver. He has back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons at Miami, and has good hands, ball tracking skills, and makes difficult catches downfield. He's intelligent and has a strong awareness for zone coverage. So, like a Hunter Renfrow, if you will. Has good body control and a good blocker. So he's just a football player. He gets down and dirty, and we like that a lot, especially at his size. So Xavier Restrepo looks the most NFL-ready receiver at the Senior Bowl, especially as a slot guy. He's not good outside. He doesn't have the size or really even the speed, but his intelligence in finding the open spaces is very, very good. And he should be able to make a big impact at the Senior Bowl. This is another player that could have like a Roman Wilson, Lad McConkey type week down in Mobile. Next is Tez Johnson, the Oregon wide receiver. He's 5'10", but only 165 pounds. But he's incredibly quick with very, very good acceleration. Very good after the catch, and a decent route runner as well. He has only 898 yards, but 10 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons, and he had 1,100 yards with Bo Nix as his quarterback, so we can't fault him too much for taking a down tick after using his quarterback. His main thing is he does not have great hands. He is quick. He is great after the catch and everything, but he doesn't have great hands. He does have some drop issues, and he also is just very undersized at 5'10", 165. So he has a lot to prove this week. Can he get in and out of breaks? Can he fix his drop issue? All that stuff. Tez Johnson was a very exciting prospect last year, has lost a lot of steam. Savion Williams out of TCU. This is the tallest player there. He's 6'5", 225 pounds. And I'm not going to lie, his stats don't jump off the page, and I feel like the way they should. He only had 611 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns this year. But what really caught my eye is he had 51 carries for 322 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. And on his scouting report, you see that he did make the 2023 College Football Freaks list on The Athletic, which is awesome stuff. He is extremely, extremely athletic for his size as well, and that's what we love to see. A lot of times these tall players, especially at 6'5", don't have the strength or any of the athleticism really besides being just tall. But he's 6'5" and 225 pounds and quick. So he really does possess all of the skills to be an important vertical and red zone threat at the NFL level, especially if he gets the right landing spot. So yeah, he wasn't able to do a ton at TCU, but the fact that they had him carry the ball at his height, I think shows a lot in terms of his athleticism, and he still did have 6 touchdowns and 4 straight seasons averaging over 10 yards a catch. So Savion Williams, he has the athleticism and the profile to be good at the NFL level, just hasn't necessarily showed it yet at college. And the last wide receiver I want to cover is Kyle Williams out of Washington State. He's 6 foot, 186 pounds, so he's kind of like that Devontae Smith archetype. And he had 14 receiving touchdowns this year, which kind of stood out to me. Pretty low production over the course of his career, but 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns in his final season, 5 years. Decent stuff. Not a lot of scouting reports out there about him, but you know, had 57 rush yards as well, so some designed carries on top of his 14 touchdowns. Does show to me that he can produce at the next level. Gonna be a later pick, but someone that I want to keep my eye on as a little bit of a sleeper is Kyle Williams out of Washington State. And lastly, the tight end position. Arguably the best tight end in the class, Harold Fannin Jr. is down in Mobile. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, so he's got like that Chigakonkwo size. And last year at Bowling Green, 1,555 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. He also had 3 straight years with carries. He's had rushing touchdowns, hyper athletic tight end, and 1,500 receiving yards for a tight end. That's insane at the college level. I usually use about 500 yards as my benchmark to be a receiving threat. So to see 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns, that makes my eyes wide. So Harold Fannin Jr., he's already arguably the #1 tight end in this class, right next to Loveland out of Michigan. But Loveland's not at the Senior Bowl. Harold Fannin is. And this is an incredible opportunity for him to show up against some opponents that he hasn't been able to play against, right? Like at Bowling Green, you don't have the competition that you have at the Senior Bowl. So if he can continue to display his hyper athleticism and production down in Mobile, that's very, very exciting news. So make sure you keep your eye on Harold Fannin Jr. Already arguably the tight end one, can really truly separate himself down in Mobile. And then there's also Gunnar Helm. This is a more traditional tight end. He's 6'5", 250 pounds, but also has the receiving prowess. Like I mentioned, 500 yards is kind of my benchmark, and he's been behind Jatavian Sanders, but this year with Sanders gone, he had 786 receiving yards and 7 receiving touchdowns. That's, again, really, really good production for a tight end. His problem is he's not a good blocker, but he's a receiving tight end, so we don't care, you know? Gunnar Helm's awesome. He does look very good, and I'm very excited to see him down in Mobile as well, but most excited for Harold Fannin Jr. And that's it, guys. That's my 20-plus rookies that I'm going to be keeping an eye on this week. You guys keep your eye on them as well. Make sure you follow me at JFootballWine on Twitter. Make sure you follow Player Profiler and Player Profiler Now on Twitter as well. Really great stuff going to be coming out consistently. Give Theo a follow. Give Anand a follow. Everything you need to know from Mobile, coming from us live. I'm going to be doing live tweeting, threads, and then I'm also going to be making videos on top of recording with my camera, on top of taking photos. Really cool stuff going to be coming from me. Very, very excited. If you thought last year's coverage was good, just wait for this year. Go ahead and shoot me a follow at JFootballWine on any social media platform. And I didn't see any questions in the chat, so I'm just going to go ahead and say have a magnificent Monday. I'm not sure if there'll be a Wednesday episode since I'll be down in Mobile, but there will definitely be Senior Bowl coverage videos with me in it, so make sure you stay tuned to the Player Profiler YouTube. And then I will be back Friday. You know, I leave Thursday afternoon, so I'll be back Friday for probably a Senior Bowl review episode. It's going to be awesome stuff. I'm super, super excited. You all have a magnificent Monday. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the Senior Bowl. And stay tuned for my coverage. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. And make sure you have a good week. Peace.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.